There is a single mechanical trick that turns a small pile of money into a large one, and it is not luck, it is not a hot stock pick, it is just math being patient with you. Today we are opening up that machine and looking at exactly how compound interest works, because most people think they understand it and almost nobody actually feels it in their gut. Once you feel it, you will never look at saving the same way again. Start with the simple version of growth, because that is the one our brains default to. Imagine you put some money aside and it earns a fixed amount every single year, always calculated on the original amount you started with. That is simple growth. It is a straight line. Steady, predictable, a little boring. Compound growth looks similar at first glance, but there is one crucial difference. The money you earn does not just sit there separately, it gets folded back in, and next year you earn a return on your original amount plus all the returns it already made. Your earnings start earning their own earnings. That is the whole trick. It sounds small when you say it out loud, but small mechanical differences, run over long stretches of time, produce wildly different outcomes. Here is a rough mental shortcut that finance people love, called the Rule of 72. If you want to estimate how many years it takes money to roughly double at a given growth rate, divide 72 by that rate. So if money is growing at about 6% a year, 72 divided by 6 is 12, meaning it would take roughly 12 years to double. At 9%, it is closer to 8 years. This is just a rough illustration of the math, not a promise about any real investment, because real growth rates move around and are never guaranteed. But the shortcut is useful because it makes the doubling idea concrete in your head instead of abstract. Now here is the part that trips people up emotionally. The early years of compounding look almost embarrassingly slow. If you are patiently adding money and the growth rate is modest, the first few years barely seem to move. The chart looks flat. It is tempting to think nothing is happening and get discouraged. But underneath that flat-looking line, the machine is quietly building the base that everything later gets multiplied on top of. Then, somewhere further down the timeline, the curve stops looking flat and starts bending upward sharply. That bend is not a new trick kicking in, it is the same trick that was running the whole time, just now operating on a much bigger number. This is why compounding is often described as slow, then sudden. The boring years are not wasted years, they are the setup. This is where the classic comparison comes in, and it is genuinely one of the most useful stories in personal finance education. Picture two people. The first person starts saving a modest amount early, say in their 20s, and does it consistently for about 10 years, then stops adding new money completely and just lets what they built sit and keep growing untouched. The second person waits 10 years longer to start, then saves a larger amount every year for a much longer stretch, maybe 20 or 30 years, trying to catch up. Here is the surprising, almost unfair feeling result. In many illustrative versions of this comparison, the early starter, despite contributing far less money overall and stopping after just a decade, ends up with a comparable or even larger total than the person who started later and worked much harder for much longer. Why? Because time is not a minor ingredient in this recipe, it is the ingredient that gets multiplied. Those extra 10 years of compounding at the start are worth more than a decade of larger contributions added later, because each early dollar had more years to fold its earnings back on itself. This is purely illustrative math to show the mechanism, not a specific promise about what any person's results would be, but the mechanism itself is real and it is worth sitting with. Starting early is less about how much you put in and more about how much time you give the machine to run. Now for the mirror image, because this same mechanism has a dark twin, and it runs on high-interest debt. When you carry a balance on something like a high-interest credit card, the exact same folding in process happens, except now it is working against you. Interest gets charged, and if it is not paid off, that interest itself starts accumulating its own interest. The balance does not grow in a straight line either, it can curve upward the same way savings do, just in the wrong direction for you. This is why high-interest debt can feel like it grows faster than seems possible. It is the identical machine, just pointed the other way. So what is the calm, practical takeaway from understanding this machine? First, if there is high-interest debt sitting around, dealing with that tends to come first, because you are essentially fighting reverse compounding, and that fight gets harder the longer you wait. Second, once that is handled, the real power move is automating contributions, so that money moves into savings or investments regularly without you having to rely on willpower or memory every single month. Third, and this is the hardest part for most people, once it is automated, the best thing you can often do is leave it alone and let time do the folding. Not check it constantly, not chase quick moves, just let the mechanism run. This is general education about how the math of growth and debt works, not personalized financial advice, and everyone's situation is different, so think of this as understanding the engine, not as a specific instruction for your own money. But once you understand the engine, the lesson is almost embarrassingly simple. Patience beats brilliance. The person who starts early and does nothing dramatic often outperforms the person chasing clever moves later. Give the machine time, and let it work. This is Money Mechanics. One money rule at a time. I will see you tomorrow.